if you're watching this after the fact, you can always leave some comments at the end of this video, and I'll be sure to respond or to, you know, use your feedback for the next live. We're talking about, for those of you just joining, the dangers of ambition. What do I mean by that? Let me begin by asking you the question. Um, when you were young and you thought about what it is that you wanted to become, what it is that you wanted to do, where did you get that information from? Um, what caused you to dream of that dream? Was it because of suggestions made to you? Was it because of your circumstance why you wanted to? Um, and I guess the whole idea for most of us is that most of us have thought about what we want to become and what is it that we want to do with our lives because of external circumstances. Whether it's because that is what we've seen in the society, what people have held up to us as this is what is ambitious. This is what is great, and this is what is ideal, or whether it's the circumstances of our lives. So we grew up, perhaps maybe grew up poor, and we think that this is what we need to do to get out of poverty. Um, so very often, the point I'm making is that very often the plans that we make for our lives and the goals that we set for our lives are informed by some external forces. They are informed by circumstances outside of ourselves. Um, and we don't remain malleable because we figure out that once we have set a goal, once we have made a plan of what we want to do with our lives, that it must remain that way. Um, and very often we think that when we have to reassess, reevaluate, and realign our lives, that we are being a failure. Yeah. And that is what I'm talking about when I talk about the danger of ambition, because it sometimes hold us in a bind, and we're so rigid in what it is that we want to do with our lives, that when life happens and we are redirected, I don't want to say we are forced to change our minds, but we are redirected. We start internalizing that as failure, and we begin to go on a path that is very self-destructive. So let's explore that. Let's explore that. Let's talk about where it is that you first got the suggestion of what is it that you need to do with your life. I I wrote a book called Grab You Some Lemons, and it really was about understanding that all of the experiences of our lives have come to teach us something. They have come to teach us lessons. That the stones that we think they are stones that life throws at us are never meant to knock us out. They're meant to supply us with the material that we need to build the empire that we need to build for our own lives. Um, and how does that fit in with the whole idea of ambition? Because you see, when I was growing up, I knew that I wanted to be a lawyer, um, because for prestige and for power and for popularity and for wealth, that was the career choice I associated with all of those. Yeah. And because I was deemed what you call smart in school, many and very expressive, many persons thought that that is what you needed to do. You will become a lawyer. And so I planned my life around the idea of becoming a lawyer. Primary school, high school, I knew that I would become a lawyer. But life happened. Life happened, and I had to make some detours. I had to make some different choices. Um, and for a long while, the ambition of being a lawyer and not meeting that ambition, not keeping on that goal, on that path, caused me to feel like I were a failure. If we were to be honest for a minute, many of us have set goals. We do it at the beginning of the year. Just at the beginning of the year, I facilitated a vision board workshop. Um, and one of the things that I tried to get the participants to do is to think outside of just cutting and pasting pretty pictures of things that they want, that they think would bring them in closer proximity to prestige and power and popularity and notoriety and all of that kind of thing. Think outside of that, to think about the passions that they have, to think about the strengths that they have, to think closely about the the things that drive them, to think about what their life's purpose is, and to create a vision around this life purpose. And having created this picture of what they believe their life purpose was, to now set goals that were aligned to this purpose. And why did I do that? I did that because when we think of our ambition, very often that changes. It changes with time, it changes with experiences in life, it changes as we evolve, as we become more, as we become full of versions of ourselves. We realize that the goals that we set yesteryear as teenagers really do not obtain now. They will not serve us at this stage in our lives. And we must be open and willing to change. We must be open and willing to evolve. We must be open and willing to say, okay, this goal is not serving the direction that my life is headed in, that the direction that I want my life to go in. So I must let it go. And you're not a failure for letting it go. You're not a failure for recognizing that this goal is not serving you and you need to let it go. Don't let anybody get you trapped in this vortex of ticking off all of these goals that you have set that you need to meet. No, no. And I'm not bashing goals. Set goals. I have goals. I set goals. But I also realize that these goals that I set are written on paper and with pen or pencil. They can be torn out, they can be crumpled up, they can be thrown away, and I can set new goals as long as I have breath, because life redirects us and causes us to realign our goals with where we are going and with the purpose that our lives are taking on. So, dangers of ambition. One of the things that ambition does, especially since many of the things, ambitions that we set, do not come from us. They come from external forces. They come from what society says that we need to do to become acceptable, that we need to do to become ideal, that we need to do to be seen and to be respected, right? What they do is that when we don't meet them, they cause us to, one, label ourselves a failure. Now, I want you to disabuse yourself of that idea that not meeting a goal, not meeting a life's ambition makes you a failure. When you internalize that, one, it's not good for your mental health, but two, it's not good for your progress, because you will stay behind. You will stay tethered to that spot, waiting for that thing to happen in your life that will never happen because it was never meant for you, because life had a different plan for you, because life had a different path for you to take, because life wanted to redirect you into a place that where you would flourish, where all of your gifts, your talents, your abilities, your potentials could be realized. But because you are so tied, because you are so tethered to a goal, because you're so tethered to some ambition that somebody else has told you is for you. You are not willing to move forward. Let it go. Let it go. Hi, hi, Orion. Good to have you. Thanks for joining us, Twanza and Kellon. We're talking about the danger of ambition, and feel free to chime in anytime with your comments, with your suggestion. We're talking about the dangers of ambition, and just for some context, I'm not saying ambition is bad. I'm not telling people to not have ambition and not be ambitious. What I'm saying is that many of the times, what we are ambitious about, the ambition that we have set for ourselves, come from external forces. They come from suggestions that persons have made to us to tell us that for us to be seen as worthy and for us to be validated, that we need to be this. And so we set those ambitions. And then when life happens and tries to redirect us and take us on a different path, we start feeling like a failure. Yeah, and I shared about how it is that I've always planned my life around the ambition of becoming an attorney, but that never happened. And I had to be malleable enough to allow myself and my ambition to shift, to recognize that progress is not necessarily about achieving goals and about ticking off goals. Progress is about walking in your path and walking in purpose. So that is what we were talking about. That is the context of what we are talking about. And one of the dangers that I had mentioned, the first danger I had mentioned, is that when we are so tethered to ambition, that we start feeling as failure when we are not meeting those goals. And feeling as a failure causes us to remain stuck, because we're sitting there, we're staying there, and we're waiting for the time to come when goal number one will be met. And life has moved on and is trying to pull us, but we're staying right there, and we're left with on um, fulfilled dreams. We're left with potentials that are untapped because we're not willing for life to stretch us and increase and expand our capacity and to cause us to do and to become more. So that's where we are. The first danger is the belief that we have failed. The second danger that I want to mention is that need for validation, especially external validation. That need for somebody to say that because you have done that, you are good. Because you have done that, you are worthy. Because you have done that, you somehow have earned greater respect. Let me tell you that you are inherently worthy. You are inherently enough, that you do not need anything else to be worthy, to be enough, and to be validated. Validation comes from within. Validation comes from, as we would say in advocacy, living your truth. And that truth is understanding who you are. Self-awareness is very important. Understanding who you are, understanding what your individual assignment is, understanding what your path has to be. And that for some people may not look ambitious. That for some people may not look as if you have any real potential. That for some people may not look worthy, because it may be that you are not necessarily called to be in corporate Jamaica or corporate wherever you are from. Orion is in Canada. I think that's what was the last place you were, right? If I remember, we were classmates. Um, or it may be that what you are called to do may not make you the big bucks and cause you to have the fattest bank account. And you know, so but you would have found significance because you would have lived your truth, and you would have lived in your purpose, and you would have walked the path that you've called to walk. You would have created a path instead of walking in somebody else's footstep. So that need for validation is a very, very dangerous thing. um, and it can cause you to spiral into a place of depression, into a place of um, not feeling good enough. That whole self-worth thing. And I know a thing or two about not feeling enough, not feeling worthy, um, having struggled with depression, um, and very often you look for validation outside of yourself. So watch that. Walk in purpose. Pursue purpose rather than ambition. The third danger of of the whole idea of ambition is that very often, if we don't be careful to walk in our purpose, we'll find that we're not adding value. We're not adding value because we are living out somebody else's expectations. We are living out somebody else's dream. Um, I know, chances are that those of you who are watching the live, everybody has known where we have been influenced by others. Yeah. And this whole idea of creating a dream for our lives, I've noticed and I've observed. I've been a teacher, I've been in the classroom long enough, and I've dealt with people long enough to recognize that very often people make plans for their lives as a carbon copy of somebody else. I'll say that again. Very often people make plans for their lives as a carbon copy of somebody else. So them copying somebody else's life, trying to match up, trying to live up, trying to pattern their lives after a friend, after a relative, after um, some celebrity that they look up to and they would love to be like. And yes, they're achieving things and yes, they're making strides, but it's not their own. It is somebody else's expectations, and they're not necessarily adding value. Whereas if it is that you walk in your purpose, that you seek to find that specific assignment that only you can fulfill because of your uniqueness, because of the attributes, because of the characteristics, because of the essence of who you are, and that you bring all of that to the table, that you're able to add value and significance to somebody else's life, that you realize that you have lived a fulfilled life. In Erik Erikson's stages of psychosocial development, he talks about the stage of generativity. Um, that's a stage when you are really thinking and very concerned about how it is that your life has impacted others. And so you find that there are many people who get to the point of um, mid, reach midlife, and they get to the point of thinking, what can I do with my life? They want to career pivot. We call it in human development. They want to career pivot. And the whole idea of career pivoting is very good because at this stage in their lives, they're looking for significance outside of what can I accumulate for myself. But what if we can get a kickstart? What if we can start very earlier in our lives, in our journey? What if very early in our lives we can teach ourselves and we can teach our children to dig within, to search within, to turn the eyeballs on the inside and to begin to self interrogate and ask, what am I placed here to do? How can I use my gifts and my talents to make life better, not just for myself, but for others? Because you see, the thing about purpose is that purpose is more altruistic than ambition. Ambition is very self centric. very me, what I can get for me, what I can accomplish for me. This individualism is very dangerous for community, the idea of community and the idea of the perpetuity of humanity. But purpose thinks about not just me, but community. How can I add value? How can I make space and community better? What am I placed here to do to make this place better than I found it? And that's the case that I'm making tonight. I'm making a case for choosing purpose over ambition, choosing purpose over career. Um, so third, that we really end up living unfulfilled lives when we seek ambition over purpose. The fourth danger that I want to speak to when it as it concerns the whole idea of ambition um, is that when we are in pursuit of ambition over purpose, not only do we not live out our fullest potential and live a life that is fulfilled, but, and this one is very closely related to the previous point, but we deprive the world of the best of ourselves. Yeah, we deprive the world of the best of ourselves. The best of ourselves is realized when we are being all that we can be. The best of ourselves is realized when we are walking in our truth. The best of ourselves. And we talk all the time about living our best lives. And very often that is demonstrated in social media by the places that we can go and drink and party and enjoy the hedonistic tendencies of life. And I'm not using hedonism here as a bad word. I'm using it as really speaking to pleasures, right? So we think that we very often equate living our best lives to the pleasures of life rather than how much we are living in our fullest, truest, most purposeful way. Yeah, that is how we live the best of our lives, in my opinion, living a life of purpose, living in the fullness of our truth, living in the fullness of who we are and who we are called to be and to become in the earth so that we add value, so that we make lives better, so that we leave this world better than we found it. So those for me are what I call the dangers of ambition, particularly because very often the ambition that we hold to do not come from us. They come from um, family, they come from friends, they come from the media, they come from social media algorithms because what we search on, they know how to sell that to marketers to pop up in ads in our timelines and on our streams and make suggestions to us, and psychologically we register it and we start to plan our lives and set goals and make ambitions that are based off of that. It has nothing to do with what comes from the core, with this awareness of who we are. Yeah, so I say sit with yourself and become aware. And it's so ironic that this is coming from somebody like myself. I spoke at a graduation the other day, and they asked me to speak about um, some goal, something, and to speak to the graduates about that as they prepare for life after graduating from high school. And I was like, wow, what am I going to say to these graduates? And I went and I said to them, be open to life, be willing to surrender to life, set goals, but be open to those goals changing. Be open to those goals becoming something else. Be open when life redirects you. For me, there is nothing in life called failure because every experience has come to teach you something, and they're only lessons. And if you have learned lessons, then how could you have failed? What you have done is that you have increased and expanded your capacity, and you are able now to teach somebody because you can take them somewhere that you have been. And I really just shared with them that seek purpose, sit with yourself and ask yourself, who are you? What are the innate abilities and strengths and characteristics that you possess? And how could you use that to make the world better? And very often, when you start to interrogate yourself and sit with yourself and become aware of who you are and all that you have in your hand, you realize that you can use what you have and who you are to bring change to the world, in a way that pursuing ambition, especially since it's suggested by others, can't. So put your questions down there. It was a good 20 minutes with you. This wasn't meant to be long-winded. I had hoped that we would have had um, more participation. Thank you for your feedback, Orion. I won't call you the name we used to call you back in school. Thank you for joining. Thanks for joining, Twanza, Kellon. And we can continue the discussion afterwards, long after this live is finished. But I just appreciate those of you who stopped by, who remained, and who said hi. Um, until next time, thank you for joining this live, and I look forward to sharing with you again. Remember, seek purpose over anything else because you are unique and you are placed here not just to extract from the earth, but to add value. And long after you're gone, your legacy will live on because you chose to walk in purpose rather than pursue ambition. Have a great night.